Okay, hello everybody. Nice to be back here again, and thank you to Fee and Rabbi Harris for inviting me again. It was nice to be here. And my talk is about cracking the code. But before I go there, I just want to make sure, can everybody hear me okay? Yeah, you want me to speak louder? Turn it up a bit, please. Okay, how's that now? Better? Yeah, okay, great. I know my speech is a little bit different because of my hearing, so let's see how it goes. I remember when I first spoke here this time last year, it was my first keynote speech, right? And I remember saying that my legs were made of jelly. No, really that kind of nervous. And today I think I've got some bones in my leg, so I'll be standing up. So cracking the code, for most of my life I've been quite logical. It's what helped me to get through life when it seemed like I was at a disadvantage in growing up. Because of my hearing, I wasn't able to connect with other people and so on. So I knew that logic was something that would help me out. But I didn't realise how far the logic would go. And the three principles was something that was quite out of normality in a way, but there was something in there that I knew that I could get something from. So for a while I wanted the three principles to help me out, as Fee was saying earlier, and there was a sense of there's something there but I couldn't put my finger on the pulse. And then I had a conversation with Keith about just over 3 years ago, and it turned out that when I was trying to find that finger on the pulse, and I thought it was down there, it turned out to be way over there. So, cracking the code. If we go back in time a little bit, I think it might have been the 1980s, there was a book published, Insanity, Sanity, Common Sense, or Sanity, Insanity, Common Sense, can't remember. Right? And in that book, there were 4 principles. Right? And one of them, the principle of feelings. When Citibank heard about it, that feelings were being promoted as a principle, he was furious. So that was like a little step back. Feelings are not a principle. And there's another quote, Citibank said, all feelings, whether positive or negative, derive and come alive from the power of thought. So here I am thinking that good feelings were where it's at, and then all of a sudden I realised it's not a principle anymore. I can have the most beautiful feeling, great, it's still not a principle. I can be in the darkest of places, it's still not a principle. So that got me to think, there's something, so what is the principle then? So the question that Citibank said that feelings are not a principle, I wanted to know why he would say that. And the only thing I could come up with was that feelings change, it's a variable. Because I can say throughout my whole life, I've been in some very dark places and I've had some very nice moments too. And I'm willing to bet the same for every one of you. Yeah. So clearly, from the beginning, Citibank knew that looking towards what changes wasn't going to help us out here. There was something unchangeable about a principle. Okay? So that gave me a direction in which I could start thinking about the 3 principles that I would not have had before. So now, one of the things that people say is your feelings are coming from thought in the moment, or the thought-feeling connection. So I thought, if feelings are a variable and it's not a principle, then that means thought, which is a principle, but it doesn't change. And I'm sort of thinking, well, thought had to change in order for me to have a different experience. And I was like, well, that doesn't make sense anymore, because otherwise we wouldn't say that thought is a principle. It was and I didn't quite know how to reconcile that. So, and I began to wonder, what if I had a misunderstanding of what the principle of thought is? And then suddenly all my ideas about what thought is started to lose its foundation. And I was starting to have thinking, it's like, okay, so it's not that, so what could it be? What is the principle of thought? So I knew, so hearing Chitty Banks, I knew he was talking about something deeper, not the traditional way in which we understand thought. And to be honest with you, I realised that a lot of things that I had learned about these three principles, some of it was helped, but I knew that there was something, it was like a key ingredient that was missing. Moving on from there, since Disney said that if feelings are not a principle, then what a principle is unchangeable. So now we can say that whatever his definition of what a principle is must apply equally to mind, consciousness, and thought. We're not going to go in the direction of saying the definition of a principle applies to consciousness, but not thought. It needs a different definition. It had to apply to all three equally. It would get quite inconsistent otherwise, messy even. So the idea that I had about thought, for example, let's say there's a thought bubble here. Right? I don't know what it is because it's not in my head yet. And then it suddenly comes into my head, and then I experience that thought, and then it goes out. And I'm like, well, doesn't that mean that kind of thought is a variable? It changes, right? But the principle of thought is unchangeable. So I'm like, oh, that idea of there is a conveyor belt of thoughts coming to my head didn't make sense anymore. It didn't have any foundation. So that was like, oh, okay. I mean, it feels good to have the idea of, oh, if I had this thought, oh, damn, I need to go next moment. I'm clear again. There's a nice feeling with that. But that's not where it's at. The principle of thought is unchangeable. And obviously there's another metaphor. Know the idea that there's a sun and we have the weather system. The clouds come, we can't see the sun, and then wait for the clouds to go. Same principle. But thought is unchangeable. It doesn't go anywhere. So with that, I didn't know which way to turn. I couldn't get the idea beyond that my feeling changed, my thought doesn't. The principle of thought doesn't. Then what is the principle of thought? I didn't know what, I couldn't come up with an answer. And, well, Chitty Banks gave us a clue. He said, thought on its own really has no power. It is what you put into thought that gives it its power. I used to think that meant, okay, when I have this thought here, and then it comes into my head, and then I'm giving it power, therefore I'm feeling it. And then when I'm not giving it any more power, it will go. Sounds like a good technique to me. But again, it didn't work that way either. So I knew that if thought has no power, where did it get its, what did it mean where it gets its power from? It's a completely different orientation in which to understand what the principle of thought means. And Citibank also said that it is what you put into thought, such as ideas, concepts, information, you name it. And then suddenly it was like, oh, I'm seeing something here. What I used to think, here's the feeling and here's thought. And I realised that's not really thought anymore. It's more like content. It's more like thinking in the moment. And I know that my thinking changes all day long. So my thinking changes, so does my feeling. Now I've got a connection. There seems to be a very strong association. So where did thought come into it? If all feeling comes from thought in the moment, then doesn't that mean it's not coming from thinking? I had to get that clear for myself. And then I realised, what if my thinking in the moment goes into thought? It informed the principle of thought to give me the feeling in the moment. That worked. It cleared it up. And that cleared up another illusion that I had that I didn't know. I thought that the principle of thought gave us the ability to think. But if thinking is going into thought, then that I have to rule out that thought gives you the ability to think. It's the other way around. Oh. So, before, there was a sense of there was something I could do with thought. Now, because I'm having thinking in the moment, and regardless of what I'm thinking in the moment, the principle of thought is going to give me the experience of my thinking in the moment, whether I want to have that experience or not. There's no ifs or buts here. And then suddenly, the three principles for me became hands off. Before I was like, maybe I can get in touch with consciousness and then I could become more aware. Maybe I can get in touch with the principle of thought, then my reality will change. Maybe I can get in touch with the principle of mind and then I can get all the goodness out of it. It would, for me, it was an illusion that I never knew I had. It smashed it big time. And the weight that came up my shoulders, whoa, what a peaceful feeling that was. It also provided a lot of answers that I had been looking for, that I didn't know that I would find it there. For example, parenting, for example. Raise your hand if you're a parent. Okay, wow, okay. Well, let me tell you, I have the utmost respect for you as a parent. I think it's the greatest responsibility anyone can take. So, great. There's this idea that when you're looking at a kid, right, we say that they are resilient. That's true. I'm not arguing with that. But it wasn't the complete picture. I wanted to see, I could see that in almost every child, if not every one of them, there are times when they are not resilient. And then suddenly the whole picture became clearer. Before I was like, look at the child, they're being resilient, and then and then hope for the best or whatever. But now that we have a whole picture, there are times when a kid is not doing well, and there are times when the kid gets better, is resilient. So it's like, oh, okay, interesting. My colleague, Tess Christie, she's the one that got me out of that thinking that kids are only resilient. She's a great parent too. I've learned a lot from her. So that got me to see the principle of mind in a very different way. We tend to think of the principle of mind as a good thing. You know, it only does something very positive for you. However, if you think about the dinosaurs that got wiped out by a meteor something like 65,000 years ago, whenever, I'd be inclined to say that they would disagree that mind is a good thing. It wiped them out. So mind being the energy of all things mean everything. The good, the bad, the great, the negative, the right, the wrong, all of it is included. So that got me to see that the principle of mind couldn't really pick and choose for us what we're going to feel. Because if I think about the three principles that never changes, then I might have had it all my life. If I think the three principles are going to help me, then why did I have bad experiences in my life? If I think the three principles are going to hurt me, why did I have some great experiences in my life? So I realized that the three principles is not really what's going to help me out here. So I had to think about the three principles, this principle here, and then look at it from a different angle. And this is where Keith says to me, this is a single paradigm. In the three principles, there is a logic that's already built into it. I'm not talking about the three principles as it is and then putting the logic on top of it. That's going to cause misunderstanding. That is already ingrained. And also, because my experiences have been up and down all year long, all my life, it kind of told me that there's something about the three principles being neutral. And the neutrality of the three principles is my favourite aspect. I didn't realise how much that would help me. So, if it's neutral, how is it possible that I could then have an experience? Again, it goes back to what Chitty said. It is what you, as an individual, put into the principle of thought in the moment that gives you the experience. So by the time you're having thinking, it's already been done. So, in other words, by the time I'm having a feeling, the three principles have already done their work. And also, because I'm looking in the direction of inside out and outside in, inside out meaning my feelings are coming from the principle of thought in a moment, and outside in, my feelings are coming from something other than the principle of thought in the moment. Right? And the three principles will not choose for you which of those two paradigms you're going to be in. If it could, then I guarantee you, you'll be inside out all your life forever and be 100% resilient. Life would be like a utopia. It's not the case for me. Maybe it is for you. Thank you, 5 minutes. So that So I began to see that a principle is unchangeable, it's constant, it never goes away, it's always active, always at work, never stops for a moment. You are always going to feel your thinking in the moment because of the principle of thought. If it wasn't for the principle of thought, then how do you get to feel your thinking? It wouldn't be possible. So that gave me a lot of respect for each of the three principles. The principle of mind, thought, and consciousness. It's clearly not man-made. I didn't come up with it. Keith will say more about that after the break. So understanding the principle. I wanted to start off with the principle because there's a sense that how we define what a principle is, I'm going to leave that to you. I'm not going to give you a definition, but there's something about the word principle that can help us out here. It helps us to see things in a more logical way that works, however you use it. So, let's recap. The principle of mind, the energy of all things. I'm not going to split it into good or bad, otherwise I've split mind. I'm not going to split it into form and formless, because it's two principles. There can only ever be one principle. Yeah. And the principle of thought is more like a vehicle in which everything in life has to go through. No exceptions. So, for example, a few weeks ago, I had a kidney stone. Very painful. I wouldn't recommend it to anyone. I don't think I've got much fruit there, but okay. And the pain came on so fast. I knew, but here's the thing. How is it that I got to feel the pain? Well, thought must have been present in order for me to recognise that there's pain here. Right? If I didn't have the principle of thought, how would I know that there was pain in my body? Okay? Now, what did I do to put that into thought? I didn't do anything. But it happened. That's how it worked. So thought as the principle really has no power, and without it, not possible to have an experience. And the principle of consciousness, if it's unchangeable, the principle, then I knew that the principle of consciousness and levels of consciousness must mean something different. Levels of consciousness are infinite, can go up and down all day long. But at the principle, it's unchangeable. So I knew that consciousness must mean something else. I'm not sure whether I want to tell you how I understand consciousness, but I will anyway. But Keith will share some words from Sticky Bank, what he said about consciousness. So once I let go of levels of consciousness, something came up for me. I wondered, and don't take it as being true, this is something, this is Brett Chitty speaking, not the universal, whatever. I wonder, is the principle of consciousness what brings to the human being the feeling of thought in the moment? That's really interesting for me. Then suddenly you're like, oh, I can only have a feeling after all three principles have done their work. There's mind, the energy of all things. Then we have thinking that arises from it, but not human thinking. It goes into the principle of thought, that informs thought to create a feeling. the feeling is still not at the human person, then the consciousness tastes that feeling and then I get to experience it. Okay, I thought that was quite cool, because it shows me that there is a logic running right through the way through. Once you see that logic, then you start to see how it doesn't work. It starts to roll out things that I thought were true. Though suddenly, the idea that I said earlier, that I could do something with the 3 principles in order to have a better life, turned out to be false. There's nothing I can do. So I'm hoping that if you can see that whatever definition you want to make of the 3 principles, the word principle, it applies equally to all 3. It's not different. I know that there are some people who sort of go, here's the principle of consciousness, seem to be accurate, and then they have to sort of try and change the definition of what the principle is when it comes to thought, though it justifies the way I talk about it. It's not going to work. You've got to keep it consistent all the way through. Okay? So I know that my talk is not the most interesting of all, but and it's not about promoting a good feeling. I'm rather happy that I haven't done that. Otherwise, I would make you believe that your feelings are coming from me. Doesn't work that way. So with that, I think I'm hoping I've given you some kind of foundation for what the word principle means. All right? Okay, thank you.